Hey everybody, so before we even get into anything about this case, about this documentary, I just want to let y'all know that we are not going to be discussing the details of those videos that took place in this documentary. I know those are very triggering for a lot of people. I found it hard to watch, so do not worry. We're just going to refer to them as the horrible cat videos, if we need to refer to them throughout this. So I felt like this was a documentary about several things really. Obviously it's about the case of Luka Magnotta. We're going to be discussing him. We're going to be discussing some of the things that the documentary left out, what he's up to, so on and so forth. But we're also going to be discussing the documentary as an entity all of its own. I felt like it was a little bit of a social commentary on the consumption of true crime as like a product, on the consumption of fame and celebrity and attention seeking. And I also felt like it was making a statement about those that are into true crime. Now, a lot of people had a lot of different feelings and thoughts on the very last sentences in this documentary given by the narrator. We are going to discuss that, don't worry. Now, essentially the story is told through two narrators who, I'm going to refer to as like the two head sleuths of this film. It's Dina Thompson and John Green. Now, right off the bat, Dina says, you know what, I was going through a breakup. I wasn't at a real good, happy place in life, and she wanted to throw herself into something. Now, she also talks about the escapism of the internet. And she's like, look, I could be anybody I wanted to on the internet, and that's what she did. Her screen name or handle, whatever you want to call it, was Body Movin', and it was basically a play on words to Body Movin'. And so that's who she went by. And again, I think this documentary speaks to that on, a person's need to escape their own reality, and how, whether it can be like for what they did, this internet group of chasing down someone doing these horrible things, or the person doing the horrible things wanting to escape the reality and to become something bigger than what they would ever be. Now, once one of the horrible kitten videos, makes its round, the first one, all these people see it and they are rightfully upset over this. I mean, it's terrible. And so obviously this gets a big momentum going. A lot of people want to figure out, who is this? Who is this monster doing this, and how can we bring them to a stop? So essentially we see Dina saying that, she joins this Facebook group. This is where the other guy, John, is too. And so they're in this Facebook group that is collectively all trying to figure out who is making the horrible kitten videos and how they can, bring him to justice. Now, Dina, Body Moving, whatever you want to call her, she lives in Las Vegas and she is a data analyst for one of the casinos there. Now, her counterpart, John, he lives in Los Angeles and he is just as dedicated to internet sleuthing as she is. Between these two and this Facebook group, the story they take us on, they go on an international manhunt for this dude. Now, this group literally, painstakingly breaks down each frame of these videos that this guy has posted. I mean, they are going through and they're saying, okay, look, we can hone in on this blanket. We figured out it was sold on eBay and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, there's a pack of cigarettes in this frame. Well, only cigarettes from this part of the country have this kind of label on it. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. They went all the way as far as to tracking down a vacuum that they saw in the video to what part of the country, or the world I should say, this vacuum can be bought in, which apparently was only released in North America. Literally that aspect of this story is insane. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And so that part to me is really interesting to see how this group came together and we're all able to really take different talents. And I'm not talking about just Dina and John here. I mean, they're the two people we're listening to the story through, but this group as a whole. I mean, they really came together and started piecing together the story. Now, again, this is over a 2-year period for them. Okay, along the way, this television show called Rescue Inc. gets involved. They see the videos and they're like, oh my God, anyone that does is we have to bring this to a stop. So the television show gets involved, and obviously that brings a lot of media, a lot of attention to this situation with Luka, but also to the Facebook group. And so thousands of people start joining this Facebook group. Now, this television show also has offered I think $5,000, to bring this dude to justice. So you combine all this stuff, a reward, people's rage, thousands of people join in on the manhunt. You name it, it kind of collides together. And this is one of the parts of the documentary that I think it's trying to make almost like a social commentary, because it kind of goes off the rails. And what I mean by goes off the rails is basically people are sitting here, saying, oh, I think it's this person, I think it's that person, I think it's this person. And they're just basically throwing any profile, any person out there. Well, along the way, somebody essentially comes by and trolls them and is essentially like making up the screen name and saying that they are the person who did the videos, the horrible kitten videos. Now, of course, this riles everybody up. It gets the group going. They're all excited. Oh my God, we found the person. And now Balding Move and Dina will say where she's like, you know what? Like the admins in this group, they all kind of decided it's this person in Southern Africa right here. Here it is. This is the person. We have figured them out. And Dina said that she was like, are we sure? Because it seems like everything's kind of pointing to, North America. But regardless, they go forth and they all decide it is this person. Here we go. And this group descends on this person and they are just blowing his social media up and all this stuff. Well, basically this takes place and soon thereafter this person takes their own life. Now it ends up that it was not that person. So I had a lot of mixed feelings about that because I'm like, this is what we see with the pitchfork hunt and all this type stuff, and just going forth with not true solid evidence on something, but more than that, like a group collectively coming together and gathering around this one person and just coming after them. Now, that being said, the guy was trolling them, and I'm not making any excuses up for what they did, but I'm also like looking at it from kind of both sides of the fence where I'm like, well, he's not completely innocent and that he did go and pretend to be this dude. What do you think is going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, clearly, these people are out for blood. Doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent, and regardless, it is a tragedy on top of another tragedy that should not have taken place. And it also adds to some of my thoughts that will come about the ending of this documentary, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So again, it's the wrong person. The videos continue, and this cat and mouse game goes. Essentially, there's a few videos made of horrible kitten videos, and then there was like the granddaddy of them all where he takes, this gentleman's life. And that one right there obviously is what kicks off the actual, true manhunt, if you will, where authorities get involved and all that. And so we're going to get to that now because what I want to do is talk about, Luca. Obviously, it's him that did it. The victim, Lin Jun. And also what the documentary left out. This case, when I started going through it, I was like, oh my God, there's so many rabbit holes. This guy was so psychotic and so complicated. Okay, so first, who is Luka? So Luka Magnotta isn't his real name, shocker. He was born Eric Clinton Kirk Newman in Ontario in 1982. Now, if that name like rings a bell to you or whatever, there's a reason why it should. His name was made up after Clint Eastwood and Kirk Douglas. He was born to Anna Yorkin and Donald Newman. He was the firstborn of 3 children. His parents didn't stay together all that long. They didn't have a really good relationship, and his mother did describe the father as abusive. Mostly Luca's grandmother, Phyllis Yorkin, would raise him, except she was extremely strict and domineering. Luca was actually homeschooled until about like middle school. And once he did end up going to school, y'all, he got bullied relentlessly. Now, one of the reasons why he was homeschooled, which was very interesting and kind of another peek into his childhood, is his mother was like a major germaphobe. She wanted to homeschool all the kids because she didn't want them really like using public bathrooms and that kind of thing. It was said that she would lock them outside a lot of times just because she was such a germaphobe. Luca would end up quitting school before he was ever able to finish high school. Now, he was in mental institutions. He lived in a group home at one point, and he actually was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Now, even from an early age, others said he was making up these like fantastic stories that were clearly lies, but it was almost like his way of coping with wanting to be someone else in a different reality. Now, in this documentary, we see, it shows us that Luca spent hours and hours and hours creating an online persona, like something that just wasn't even him. He would doctor photos of himself up. He made it look like he was this globe-trotting celebrity. He made up, I believe, 70 different Facebook groups that were like tribute Facebook fan club groups for Luka Magnotta. So you would go through these. If you were just a stranger quickly glancing, you would literally be like, huh, who is this? You know, is this a celebrity? And again, it's very interesting because there's probably some truth into how he created celebrity as to how celebrity is really created. Now, at one point, he even goes to one of the tabloids, and there's interviews, you can look this up on YouTube, where he's basically like, look, my life is ruined, you know, the internet's coming after me, and they're trying to say that I'm like, you know, dating Carla Homolka. Now, she was the Barbie killer, the Barbie and Ken killers from Canada, and I'm probably saying her last name wrong. But he basically went and created this whole thing where he was like, oh, you know, all these rumors are spreading that she and I are together, and it's just not true. Well, he had gone on and created all these with fake groups and, you know, posts and things like that. Now, one of his friends even said, you know what, he told me at one point that, you know, when he was a kid, like some really messed up stuff would happen, and she said that he used to like get upset and would start like punching himself in the face. Now, I think that's really telling because I think part of Luca's story is this absolute like disgust with himself and this absolute, you know, disliking of himself as a person, as, you know, whatever makes up his soul. Now, he would support himself as like, you know, stripping, escorting, you know, dirty films, adult films, things of this nature. Now, his life of crime started actually early on, way before he took the life of Lin Jun and, you know, the horrible kitten videos. The first thing that he did is he was accused of stealing a girlfriend's credit card, and he ran it up like thousands of dollars. And he actually was sentenced to do some time in jail over that. Now, there are some charges associated with that about him like assaulting this girl, but those were dropped. But nonetheless, you know, this started early on. There was a progression with him that we see. Now, that being said, let's talk about the actual crime that took place. Now, his victim, Lin Jun, he met this gentleman off of the internet, and Lin Jun is a 33-year-old international Chinese student. Now, he is from Wuhan, and he had gone over to Canada to, you know, pursue his college studies. Now, he was an undergraduate in engineering and computer science. So Luca meets him, they hook up, and you see video of them, you know, going to the apartment complex wherever they're staying, and you see them go in together, but then later you see only Luca leave wearing the guy's shirt. Now, during this time, all that took place, what we learn is that Luca has taken his life violently on film. He has dismembered this poor guy, and now this is not confirmed, and I looked in other places, and from what I can tell, basically there is an extended version of this video. I couldn't even watch the shortened version of it, so personally I don't want to see it. Now, what people are saying this extended version of the video shows is like necrophilia, animal cruelty, cannibalism, I mean some freaky stuff. Even if those last three components weren't part of it, what we do know that he did is absolutely horrendous. Now, to top it off, he would post this on a site called bestgore.com. Now, we're going to talk about that site and what happened to it in just a minute. So now, in the documentary, like I said, we see Luca leave by himself, and then we see later in security film him, you know, taking stuff to the garbage, checking his hair while he's doing it. Well, we later learn from a janitor of the building that the janitor's like, you know what, there's this suitcase out by, like, the garbage, and it had been there, and it was locked, and finally I was just like, you know, what's in the suitcase? So he opens it, the poor guy, and what he finds rocks his world. I mean, first of all, he's like, oh my God, the smell. But he finds a male torso. Arms, head, legs are all missing. Well, this kicks off this case. Now remember, over here, you have Baldy and Move and Dina and John, the Facebook group. They are all tracking down this person. You know, who is this, you know, that's doing all this? So when this video gets posted, someone goes to them and says, this is who you've been looking for, that type of situation, and they see this and they're like, oh my God, you know, here we go. We said this was going to happen. They had actually sent information to authorities prior to this saying, look, we think we've tracked this guy down. Here he is, yada, yada, yada. Here's some information. But Luca was already gone when that took place. Nothing ever really came of it. And Dina does say in the documentary where she felt like, oh my God, we've been sitting here trying to say people are going to get hurt. Why won't y'all listen to us? But on the same note, she even says, you know, but who are we? We don't have any credentials. You know, we're just a Facebook group that's kind of chasing down this, you know, cat killer. The frustration of that aspect had to have been gut-wrenching for them, especially once they saw this video. You know, and it was like, oh my God, you know, what we thought would happen has now happened. So, like I said, the torso is found. This creates this huge manhunt, yada yada yada. So the end result of the situation is, they obviously, this is Luca that does this, all of this comes together. Now what Luca had done is, obviously he dismembered the poor guy, and then he took his feet and hands and mailed them off to different places. I believe like the right foot and the right hand were sent to a school system. Now those were intercepted, but the other hand and foot actually made it to where they were going. And like one went to the Liberal Party and the other went to like the Prime Minister's office. Now later on, based on a tip, they did find Lin Jun's head in a park. So you can imagine, literally people are outraged. I mean, this is just like, oh my God, and all this is popping off. And so what takes place is they figure out it's Luca, international manhunt. We know who this is. We know who we're looking for. So go over to another country, to Germany. Luca goes into an internet cafe. The guy recognizes him. He rents Luca his little computer and then basically contacts authorities, and he's like, oh my God, he's here. And so they said when they came and apprehended Luca that he was on the internet reading articles about himself and his crime. And literally that is completely on brand for this dude. I'm just like, of course he was. I mean, this guy is narcissistic 101. Now, of course, Canada is like, bring him back. We want him extradited. But what was interesting is no public airline would have anything to do with him. Number one, they didn't want him on the airplane with, other passengers. Number two, they didn't want their brand to be associated with him. So it was very unprecedented, but a military airplane had to take him back to Canada. I mean, that's how shocking this dude's crimes were. Now, the trial was, as you can imagine, I mean, it was just sensational. I mean, the crime itself, I mean, come on. Obviously they tried to go for, their form of an insanity defense. It didn't work. Even though with the schizophrenia, all that type of stuff, that it wasn't happening. And he was sentenced to life in prison. But what was also interesting, and still is, in like future interviews, Luca would say, you know what, I wasn't insane. I don't have any of those issues. That was just a legal ploy that we were trying to do. None of that's true. And in true fashion, I mean, he just is going to always go against whatever for attention. He will never not love that attention, whether it's negative or positive. Now, his father even testified at the trial, and his father was like, look, I have schizophrenia too. So does my son, but guess what? It's from the mother's side. So, it turned into the sensational show, but again, fortunately for the public, it ended in him going to prison for the rest of his life. Now, the truly heartbreaking part of this, specifically at the trial, was Lin Jun's family came for this trial, and obviously that always just rips your heartstrings. Now, he did get up and give a victim impact statement, and he said in there, you know what, in one night we lost a lifetime of hope. Now, he did say, you know what, I came all the way over here to see justice was done and carried out, and he felt like his son was not let down in that. Now, he also said that he came to find out, what happened to his son that night, the whys, that type thing, to see some remorse on Lucas's part, to hear an apology. And he said, on that note, I'm leaving empty-handed. I feel so bad for them, obviously losing their son, not getting an apology, not getting remorse. Some evil like this, like Luca, you do want to try and categorize it. You do want to try and make some kind of sense of it. But sadly, I don't think there's any making sense of it. Luca doesn't care. He did this for attention. He did this for clout. He did this for fame, to feed that monster. And sadly, Lin Jun was just a pawn in that game. So, of course, after watching this, I was like, oh my God, what is this dude up to? And, I love the internet because you can just figure out all the stuff and go down these rabbit holes. So, Luca is, in prison for, the rest of his life. He will go up for parole, I think, in like 2034. So, it's far out there. But he is now married. And I was like, what? How is this possible? So in 2015, Luca enrolled in a dating website for prisoners called Canadian Inmate Connect. Now his ad was so pompous. You would have thought that Madonna was offering herself up on a damn personals ad. And hey, maybe in prison he is like that level. I don't know. But one thing is for sure, his ad did do something for Mr. Anthony Jolin. Now these two met, and apparently it was wedding bells at first sight. They had lots in common, a murderous heart being one of them. Now, Julian was already in prison for the murder of a teenager, and he also apparently took the life of another inmate in the showers. So he's a real winner. So June 26, 2017, Anthony and Luka took that leap and they got married. Now, his mother Anna was a witness to the wedding, so they seem to have reconciled the relationship over the years. She actually has gone on to write a book. I really don't plan on reading that one though. I just have not much more desire to know him that in depth. But Luka and Anthony wanted to use the family private room to like consummate the marriage, I guess, or, you know, spend the night together. I don't know. Regardless, they weren't letting that happen. Thank God. Now, as you can imagine, when COVID came up, him, like so many other people, tried to use this as an excuse to get out. But basically, luckily, the Canadian authorities were like, no. They were basically like, there's not a chance in blue hell that you are getting out. And even if we were going to consider that, but we're not, you're not even eligible to think about parole until 2034. Y'all, if he gets out, I will be shocked. But let's all keep this in mind. Remember the dude on the Greyhound bus? I'm just literally winging this right now. I do not remember. But this is a Canadian crime, and he's out again. But he was found, I think, criminally insane. And so once he was deemed better, he got to get out. So I think that might be a difference here with Luka. Let's pray he never gets out, because this kind of crazy, it ain't getting fixed. Okay, now remember the website bestgore.com. Yes, I went to go look at it, and don't ask me why I do stuff like that. I don't know. And I literally was like, I'm going to type it in and it'd be like this. And what I thought I was going to miss, I don't know. But the website is kind of sort of taken down. The owner of the website has put a statement up there that's basically saying, you know what, I'm trying to sell this, make me an offer. Now, he was arrested in connection with this, and he was charged with corrupting public morals, and which I was like, okay, wow, very interesting. Now, he would eventually plead guilty to obscenity charges. He would end up getting a 6-month conditional sentence. 3 of that was for community service, and then 3 of that was going to be on house arrest. Now, when he left the courthouse, allegedly he had a piece of duct tape over his mouth, and on it said guilty of Canadian thought crimes. For those that are interested, I'm sure there's other sites out there like that. Now, let's talk about the very ending of the documentary real quick. So at the very end of it, Dina, Body Moving, basically makes a statement, because she's having these really conflicting feelings about, should I have, been doing this? Did we help, feed into this monster that we saw of him, the attention for Luka? And so she basically turns to the camera and she's like, and you sitting at home who just watched a whole effing hour-long documentary on Luka Magnotta, are you part of the problem? Maybe it's time we turn the machine off. And so she literally chastises you. Now, I have no doubt that the directors were like, we want you to say this and look at the camera and all that. So here's my thing. Having someone who has just walked you through how they spent hours and hours and hours investing themselves into this case, involving themselves into the case in a group that ends up going after someone who is the wrong person, who takes their own life, and then turning to the camera and kind of chastising you as the viewer, it just didn't set very well with me. Now, take all that aside, I felt like the director made this, number one, the director made it, the people who made the film made it. So to sit there and then chastise the viewer in a sense of, should you be consuming this? That didn't really set that well with me either. Now, also, I felt like in the world of, documentaries, true crime, this was made in such a salacious way by incorporating the videos with the animals in it. I mean, that's clearly going to get a reaction. That was something that you could have totally left out, of this series, if you will. It's 3 parts, and I honestly felt like it could have been condensed down to at least 2. If not 1. So, so those were my thoughts. I am so curious to see, if you've seen it, what did you think about that dynamic of, the documentary? So here's my 2 cents. Again, if you have any kind of thing with animals and whatnot, do not watch it. Even if they're like, oh, they don't show it, they don't listen to that. No. I had to literally fast forward and then turn on like TikTok videos when the slightest hint of an animal, regardless of what was going on, came on, just to get through it. And literally the first episode is nothing but a breakdown of these videos. Now, another aspect that I was like, okay, really, you're going to chastise us, but you incorporated this this into the documentary. Dina says she's never actually watched some of those actual videos all the way through. And they have her watch them and react to them, which obviously is this triggering, upsetting thing. And so that's where I'm just like, well, why are you doing this really reactionary stuff only to kind of sit here and tell the viewer that you're part of this problem? You know what I mean? It just didn't sit well with me. So, for me, I personally like watching true crime. I like the psychology behind it. I like the campfire story kind of a thing, if that makes sense. Now, however, obviously these are real lives. These are real people. These are real victims. So there is that part. So there is more of an emotional tug with me than when I watch, say, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, which is more or less just, I'm scared for a second type situation. Anyways, I'm rambling. I appreciate you watching. Thank you to all the channel members, the Patreons, the mods, for making this channel possible. I wouldn't be here without you. If you want to see more of my commentary on true crime cases or other things like this, just click the videos that are popping up. I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you soon.